As children, we dream of what we want to be when we grow up. We fantasize about becoming superheroes or astronauts, or, like me, professional hockey players. We imagine what our lives would be like when we save the day, discover a new world, or score the overtime goal in a Stanley Cup final. But something happens as we get older. We're told to stop dreaming, to stop thinking about what we want, and to start thinking about what we need. As we approach the end of high school, we're told to think about our future and what we're going to do to make a living. But what does make a living even mean? What is it that we are pursuing? For most people, that means how are you going to support a family? How are you going to make money and survive? How are you going to pay for the house with the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the dog? In our transition into adulthood, we move from the bright, vibrant world of our dreams into the cold, hard world of practicality. There are many reasons people work for money, for power, sometimes just for survival. At some point, we stop focusing on doing what we love and we settle on doing what provides security. Sometimes we sacrifice our dreams because it's easy, sometimes because it's safe. But if we all gave up on our dreams, then we would miss our chance to change the world. Ask Steve Jobs. In a 2005 commencement speech at Stanford University, Steve Jobs said, "The only way to do great work is to love what you do." He talks about how even after being publicly humiliated when he was fired from Apple, he still loved what he did, and he found that he still needed to pursue the passions that brought him to where he was at that point. He bought the graphic group from Lucasfilm. He turned it into what you know today as Pixar, changing the face of animation around the world. He would go on to sell Pixar to Disney 10 years later for $7.4 billion worth of stock, making him its single largest shareholder at 7%. But unable to stay away from computers, Jobs also started a new company. It was called Next, and it developed both the software that would eventually become OS X and the framework that would form the backbone of iTunes and the Apple Store. Next was eventually purchased by Apple, ironically returning Jobs to the company that fired him years prior. But after his return, he would go on to change the music industry with the iPod and the phone industry with the iPhone. So as you can see, even though he drove innovation when he founded Apple originally, Steve Jobs' greatest work came after he had lost his own company and had been publicly humiliated in the tech industry. It was at his lowest point that he found the courage to keep going. He proved that sometimes taking a step backward is the only way to propel you forward. But years before Steve Jobs' speech at Stanford, another speech would spark my personal desire to do what I love. The year was 1998. I was a college dropout. I just left the military, and I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do for my future. My family took me to a luncheon award on a ceremony on a Friday afternoon for my grandfather, who worked in the television industry. He was receiving a Silver Circle Award from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences in Chicago. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award that is only given to a select few each year. While most of the recipients were on air personalities used to charming a crowd, my grandfather spent his career behind a camera or behind the scenes. While not the most eloquent or articulate, his speech would be life changing for me. He talked about his love for his job and how lucky he was. This was one of his favorite quotes that summed up his attitude, and it was listed in the Silver Circle program. The last part particularly resonated with me. He had such a love for his work, and I wanted desperately a career where I could feel the way that he felt about his job. Afterward, I began one of the greatest periods of my life. I decided to take acting and film classes, and I auditioned for every play that I could at the local community college, as you can see here. I worked a basic data entry job that gave me the freedom to spend most of my time learning lines and doing homework. I wasn't making any money, but I loved every minute of what I was doing. Inevitably, however, I found I had to find a way to pay the bills. While I was being extremely productive from a creative standpoint, I was struggling financially as I tried to pay off the debt I'd accumulated while I was in college and in the service. I started to look for better employment and I found it in retail. But with retail hours, time for theater and school quickly disappeared. There were a lot of positives, though, that came out of that career. I learned a lot about business and management and communication. As I rose through the ranks, I found myself in a position where I was traveling the country and I was making damn good money. Once a year, I was able to meet with developers and game designers at our annual conference. This is actually a picture of me and one of my game design heroes, Dallas Dickinson, formerly of BioWare. But I had a job making nearly six figures. I had a new house, I had a new car, and a new wife. But my work was unfulfilling. I'd forgotten about my dreams. I'd forgotten about my passion. I'd stumbled into the trap that many do. I pursued money and power and security, and I found a job that I was good at. And as the years went on, I grew accustomed to a certain lifestyle. But in January of 2013, that all changed. My position was eliminated. I found myself out of a job. I had nowhere to go. I was unwilling to return to retail. When I did re-enter the job market, I did it in banking, and I quickly realized how far I'd fallen from the path that I'd set out on after my grandfather's speech. I came to the realization that I would rather lose everything in pursuit of my dreams than to continue to work without purpose. With encouragement from my wife, I decided to go back to school and pursue a career in something that I love. The transition has come at a heavy price, though. We lost our house, I lost my car, I've declared bankruptcy, and we've started over completely. Some days are harder than others, but I think back to why I changed everything in the first place. I think back to my grandfather and his love for his work. I think about the great work that I want to do. I want you to think about the dreams you had as a kid. What did you want to do? If money was no object, what job would you do right now for free? How many of you would still do the job that you're doing right now? Life's a journey. It always ends in the same place. Are you going to take the easy path, clinging to the security while you cruise through life unscathed? Or will you take the road less traveled with an opportunity to do great work? Just because you are no longer a child doesn't mean you have to stop dreaming. Whether you are lucky and find it right away like my grandfather, or you go through the tumultuous roller coaster ride like Steve Jobs, pursue your passions and find the careers you love. Never settle for doing anything less than your greatest work, and you will find that when the sun sets, that you too can change the world.